Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping ourselves into something truly atmospheric, something that, well, really changed how musicians, guitarists especially, thought about infinite sustain. We are unpacking the Electro Harmonix SuperEgo synth engine.
Yeah, and we've got quite a stack of sources here, looking through its history, the features, how it evolved. And what jumps out immediately is that when EHX dropped this in 2012, millimeter, it wasn't just another effect pedal. They were definitely aiming higher, like a full-blown sound design tool.
That difference effect versus tool, that's really our mission today, isn't it? We need to unpack why the SuperEgo keeps getting called a polyphonic synth engine and how features like, Gliss and the auto mode helped it carve out this pretty unique and lasting legacy, especially in ambient, experimental, shoegaze type stuff. Our sources make it clear this is a deliberate step up, a real generational leap.
Absolutely. And to get that leap, you kind of have to look at where it started. The SuperEgo, it built directly on its predecessor, the EHX Freeze, the Freeze sound retainer, which came out, 2 years earlier? 2010.
Right, the Freeze. Yeah. That was already pretty cool on its own. Kind of a revolutionary little utility pedal that you just grab a note or a chord and just hold it indefinitely. Simple, worked great, small footprint.
Exactly. It was like the perfect utility. Push the button, hold the sound, done. But, if the Freeze was the starting gun, the SuperEgo in 2012 was like the whole race. It took that basic idea, freezing sound, and just expanded it massively.
Okay, so why wasn't the Freeze called a synth engine then? I mean, it held a chord, right? In that polyphonic sustain?
That's a really good question, and it gets right to the heart of why they use that word engine. See, the Freeze was static. It just grabbed a snapshot, like a photo. The SuperEgo, though, it added the critical stuff you need to actually manipulate the sound, to make it dynamic. Layering sounds, triggering automatically, actively shaping the tone. That's what makes it an engine. It turned that static photo into, a playable texture, a moving picture.
And EHX really leaned into that, did they, in the marketing? They specifically called it a polyphonic synth engine. For guitar, yeah, but also bass, keys, whatever. They clearly wanted players to think of it as a creative instrument, not just some, background effect you hit once a song.
Yeah, that positioning was smart. It helped it avoid just being labeled another sustain pedal. Instead, people saw it as this core tool for building these big, layered, atmospheric soundscapes.
Which means they needed the tech to back that up. So, let's get into it. What was under the hood? What made it such a big leap from the Freeze?
Okay, so digging into the circuit. The heart of it is a DSP core. Now, for listeners maybe not deep into digital electronics, that just means it uses a dedicated digital signal processor chip, like a little computer brain. This allowed for much more complex programmable stuff, which was key because the Freeze was, simpler, based on a much more basic algorithm.
So not just a slightly beefier Freeze chip, it was a whole new platform, capable of things the old one just couldn't handle.
Exactly right. And the big one, the capability this new DSP unlocked, was true polyphony, the ability to freeze multiple individual notes at the same time and, crucially, treat them like separate voices. That, plus the new filtering options, the triggering, that's what really set it apart.
And looking at the pedal itself, it's that standard EHX XO size box. Nice and compact. You've got your dry level, effect level knobs.
Yeah.
Pretty standard, right? Balance your clean guitar with the frozen sound. But the other knobs, that's where the real magic happens.
Oh, yeah. We definitely need to talk about speed. That's fundamental here. In a real synth, you control the attack and decay of the envelope. That's basically what the speed knob does on the SuperEgo. So you're not just slamming the sound on or off. You can dial in this really gentle, slow fade-in, like a soft attack, almost like a violin swell. That's huge for making those ambient pads feel, organic, atmospheric, not just blocky.
That control over the envelope. Okay, yeah, I can see how that starts to justify the synth engine name. But the real game changer, I think everyone agrees, has to be the operating modes. The little mode switch. You've got momentary and latch, which are kind of like the Freeze, right?
Yeah, those are your basic utility modes. Useful, sure. But then you get to auto mode. That's where it gets really, really interesting. This is the mode that basically turns your guitar into this perpetual sound machine.
Okay, tell us more about auto mode, because, just hearing that, it sounds like it could just become a mess. Sonic mud.
Yeah.
If it's automatically grabbing notes while you're playing, how do you stop it from just turning into one big, unusable drone?
But that's the clever part, the way the system works together. Auto mode does automatically trigger and sustain notes, yeah. But the key is, it does it kind of intelligently. It creates this continuous sustained layer underneath whatever new stuff you're playing on top. And because you have that speed control to soften how notes come in and out, and the dry level to keep your main guitar sound clear, You can play a totally distinct melody or a lead line over this automatically generated pad that just keeps going. Your guitar is literally acting like a sustaining keyboard part and a lead instrument at the same time.
Wow. That level of separation just in one small pedal.
Yeah.
It's already huge. But then they added the send-return loop.
Oh, the effects loop. Yeah, that was a masterstroke, seriously. Shows incredible foresight from the EHX designers. This loop meant you could stick other effects pedals, fuzz, delay, phaser, whatever, into the signal path, but only affecting the sustained sound, the frozen part.
Wait, hang on. So my clean guitar signal could stay totally clean, maybe just hitting my amp. But the chord that's being held underneath, that sustained pad that could be going through like a gnarly fuzz pedal and a big swimmy delay, and they wouldn't interfere.
Precisely. Totally separate pads after the signal gets split inside the pedal. It opens up just endless possibilities for parallel processing. It's like coloring the whole painting versus carefully tweaking just the background layer. That independent control, that's a huge reason why the SuperEgo got that cult following so fast.
It's the perfect tool for creating that stereo image too, right? Your lead in one place, the pad maybe processed differently, spreading out, all from one guitar. Okay, let's talk about the actual sound then. What kind of textures did this setup make possible?
Well, thanks to that more powerful DSP and the nuance you got from the speed control, the sound itself was just infinitely smoother than the freeze. The freeze could be a bit abrupt, choppy sometimes. The SuperEgo allowed for these really nice synth-like layers.
Yeah, the sources we looked at kept mentioning the variety. You could get these rich, warm, string-like pads, or classic organ sounds, or these really massive, deep synth drones, especially on bass. That kind of flexibility really pushed it beyond just being a guitar thing. It felt like genuine synth territory.
Totally.
Yeah.
But if auto mode is kind of the functional brain of the engine, the real secret weapon for ambient textures, the thing everyone talks about, is the gliss control, the gliss knob. This was the really unique feature, the one that cemented its place in those experimental genres. What it does, basically, is smooth out the pitch transition when you freeze a new sound while another one is already sustaining.
Ah, okay. So if I hold, say, a C major chord, and then while that's sustaining, I play in latch in A minor. It doesn't just abruptly cut from C to A minor in the sustain.
Exactly. It doesn't just snap. It creates this, well, they call it gliss, short for glissando or portamento effect. It's like the smooth, subtle, almost rubbery morphing of the pitch between the old sustained sound and the new one. It's not just fading one out and fading the next in. It's actually bending the pitch of the existing sound into the new one. It's really cool.
Okay, that sounds amazing. That kind of flowing pitch change.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely crucial for that dense, evolving textural music.
Yeah.
Ambient, shoegaze. It stops the sustained layers sounding too static or clunky. Creates movement even when you're technically just holding a chord.
And people got really creative with it, way beyond just guitarists. Guitar players, yeah, obvious uses. Pads, textures, sort of orchestral backing sounds. But bassists jumped on it quick, creating these huge sub-drone synth bass lines that could just hang there forever, using that polyphony to hold low notes.
And because it just freezes any sound you put into it. Keyboard players, sound designers, they found it super useful too, right, for real-time pad layering, making these unique drones that constantly shift and morph.
Yeah, it really proved itself across the board, a true sound design tool.
So thinking about where it sits in the big EHX picture, it's definitely part of that modern line of digital engines they became known for, right alongside pedals like the POG, the HOG, these complex digital beasts.
Yeah, absolutely. And putting it in that category reinforces that whole EHX philosophy. Pedals as playable instruments, tools for instant composition almost. The SuperEgo wasn't just tweaking your guitar tone, it was letting you create this whole other interactive soundscape with your guitar.
And its success, the acclaim it got,
yeah,
that naturally led to an evolution, didn't it? The SuperEgo Plus would, which came out in 2017.
Right, the Plus model.
What were the main upgrades there? Why did they feel the need for a Plus's version?
The SuperEgo Plus was mostly about adding convenience and a bit more control, I think. The big thing was integrating built-in effects right into the pedal. It had modulation, delay, reverb on board, so you didn't have to use the external send-return loop just to add some basic color, though the loop was still there for more complex stuff. And crucially, the Plus added multi-layer sustain, so you could stack even more frozen layers. And presets, which was a big request.
Right, presets are always handy. But even though the SuperEgo Plus is the one you can still buy new today, our sources really emphasized that original 2012 version. That's the one that got that real cult status, particularly with ambient players. So summing it up, what's the lasting historical impact of that first-gen SuperEgo?
I think it boils down to maybe three key things working together. First, it really completed that transformation, taking the basic freeze utility idea and turning it into a full, playable instrument capable of generating entire backing textures.
Okay.
Second, it introduced gliss. That gliss mode was genuinely unique at the time in a pedal. That smooth portamento between sustained sounds, that was a new sound design tool for guitarists, really.
And third.
And finally, it just cemented EHX's position as leaders in sustain and synth-style pedals. It changed what players expected from a sustain effect. It definitely paved the way for the SuperEgo Plus, and you have to think it inspired other companies to explore merging synthesis and sustain into these dedicated engine-type pedals, too. It really set a benchmark.
Yeah, that seems like the core takeaway here.
Yeah.
The SuperEgo wasn't just Freeze version 2.0. It was a fundamental rethink of what sustain could be. We learned how vital that gliss feature was for those smooth liquid textures, and how auto mode really let the guitar act like a proper synth engine, generating its own accompaniment.
Exactly. We saw how EHX took a simple utility, just grabbing a sound, and blew it up into this deep, playable instrument, making orchestral pads, complex drones, all from this little exo box. Amazing, really.
So we have to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on. We've seen this incredible evolution, right? SuperEgo, turning sustain from just a utility into this complex, playable engine. So thinking about other common effects, maybe something basic like tremolo or maybe a simple filter.
Yeah.
What effects do you think are kind of waiting for their SuperEgo moment? Which ones are ripe for that kind of radical expansion?
Yeah, what's the next everyday effect that's just waiting to become its own dedicated instrument? Something for you to ponder next time you're staring down at your pedal board.
Until next time, keep diving deep.